Hi, Marilyn here, and I'm back with Mystery Quilt O Sole Mio, and we're doing our part 1 piecing. So this is step 1, and the first thing that we're going to talk about is our seam allowance, because you need a good 1/4 inch seam allowance to make all of this work and go together, and so you need to check it to make sure that your seam allowance is precise. And I do this in all of my videos if you've ever watched any of them before. So you can do exactly as they're saying, 4 rectangles, 1.5 by 4.5, and piece them together and make sure that you have a 4.5 inch square. Another little easier way to do it is I cut 3 1.5 inch strips, sew them together, and then press them and do it as you normally do, not like as this is the one time I have to do it perfect. Press it as you normally do, and then take your ruler and, grab it, and then measure that middle one. And sorry they're the same color, but that top seam should be exactly 1 inch. Exactly. If it's too small, then your seam allowance is too big. If it's too big, then your seam allowance is too small, and you need to adjust it. Okay, now if you have a machine that your needle can move to the left or the right, even though you have a 1/4 inch foot, just because you have a 1/4 inch foot doesn't guarantee that your seam allowance is going to be perfect. Okay, I had my older Bernina for years and years in my 1/4 inch foot, and I always, every time I turned it on, I had to move it 1 tick to the right to get a perfect 1/4 inch. And now the Bernina I have, I don't have to do it, but you know, every time, you know, after you've sewn a long time, you need to check it, or if you've taken it in for service, which you should do regularly, you need to check it. So check to make sure it's right, correct it if you need to. If you cannot move your needle, then you need to adjust it by some other way of watching it on your guide, or putting a guide down that you can sew against. But that's the first thing that you need to do, is check it, okay? So enough about that, let's start piecing. So all the things on the left side of this sheet are going to be strip piecing. So the first one we're gonna be doing are these small strip sets, and they're gonna be from fabric 1, and you're gonna use your 2 inch strips of fabric 1 for the big one, and your 1.5 strips for the small one, and your 2 inch strips of fabric 3. And make sure you have the right ones. So go back here and look at fabric 1 and fabric 3. Make sure you grab the right ones. And you're going to be doing, make 5 of these sets, okay? So I made 5 of these sets, and you're going to be pressing to the darker one, or the fabric 3, okay? 5 of these sets all the way along. All right, easy enough. And when you're done, they should measure 3.5 inches. If they don't,
for large,
okay? If they don't, then you need to figure out what went wrong. So if you're not sure that it's going to work, take 2 scraps before you get into this, 2 little scraps that are 2 inches, sew them together and measure them and make sure they're 3.5 inches before you do 5 of these, and press them and see what size they come out. And then you can make your adjustment, okay? So now we're going to choose our 2 3.5 or 2.5 strips of fabric 2, and 1 3.5 inch or 2.5 inch strip of fabric 3 to make a B panel. You only need 1 of these. It's a big one. So here's my fabric 2 and fabric 3, and I'm going to make 1 big B panel. Now on this one, you need to press to the lighter one. So when I'm doing this, I sew 1 and press it out. I don't sew all 3 and then try to press it. So 1 of these and get it pressed out, and then sew the other one on and press it out. That's a much easier way to go about it. And then I always turn it over to make sure that my seams are all the way along, press out properly. Okay, so you just need 1 of those. And then lastly, you have to do this one using 1 9.5 inch panel, or 6.5 if you do the smaller one of fabric 1, and 2 2 inch strips of fabric 3, or the 1.5 inch strip if you're making the smaller one, to make 1.5 of these panels. 1.5. Okay, that's how much
for
you
the
need.
large, but the small you only make one panel.
For the large, but my cheap help is telling me that for the small one you only need one panel. Okay, so the tricky thing about this is that naturally we would want to press out. It's easier and it's dark, but when you look at the picture, now they have very helpful arrows. These arrows show you which way to press. You have to press in to the light, and it's trickier. It's harder to do, but you got to do it. Okay, so you have to press in, and again, I do one, sew one on, and then press it, and then do the other side, and make sure that they're sitting the right way, the correct way. Okay, so that's your strip piecing. Okay, and now we're going to be doing some of our little triangles. Okay, so now we're going to be starting the piecing for step 2, and you need to get a 1/2 square triangle of fabric 2 to a 1/4 square triangle of fabric 1. So here's my 1/4 square triangle of fabric 1 and my 1/2 square triangle of fabric 2. So fabric 1, fabric 2, all right? And I'm going to lay these out, and I really set this picture in front of me. Oh, and you need 24 of them. So count out 24 pieces. I set it out so that it looks exactly like the picture in front of me. Exactly. Okay. And when you lay these out, it's going to be really simple to piece because this lays down exactly even with the bottom. Now, the thing about this is I do not like feeding this into my machine in this direction, because this is the point just kind of will get sucked down into the little never-ending hole there. So I turn it this way and feed it through my machine in this direction. It's just happier that way. So I do have it set up how it's supposed to look, and I make sure that it's very even, and then I grab it and I turn it and feed it this way through my machine. And it just seems to work better that way. So just a thought to think about. And then when you finish it, you're going to press towards fabric 2. So that's your press right there, okay? And it doesn't talk about cutting off any of the dog ears, so I'm guessing that that is not something we need to do, okay? So that's step 2. Now, step 3, you're going to be doing what they call X blocks and Y blocks. So I have the, this is first the X block, and you're going to be taking a 1/2 square triangle of fabric 2 and a 1/4 square triangle of fabric 4. So that's what these are, and you need to set them up exactly like it looks in the picture. I'll turn it around so you can see that setup there. That's what that looks like. And this is the setup of the Y. Okay, that's the setup there. So I'm going to kind of turn it around so I can see it. So now this is how it would look when I'm setting it up through the sewing machine here. And you need to make 14 of each, not too bad. So when I'm setting it up to put it through the sewing machine, I count up 14 and 14, and then I'm just going to lay them together, and they just go through the sewing machine just straight away, just like that. So very easy. And you're going to be pressing it towards fabric 4. Now, once you do that, you do have a little dog ear right here, and you're going to cut that off on both of those. Okay, so you're going to have 14 each of those. And then on this piece here, then you're going to be doing the block Z. So you're going to take a 1/2 square triangle of fabric 2, and then the square of the 3.5 inch square of fabric 1, or 2.5 inch square of the smaller one. And this is what it looks like here. So that's the layout. And your setup is just here, and then the layout right here is just matched up there. And then I just run it through the machine just like this. And then you're going to be pressing towards fabric 2. And then you can see the pressing with the arrow going this way. Okay, press towards fabric 2. And then you do want to trim that dog ear, which will be cut right off there. Okay, so you need to have 10 of those. So we'll make 10 of those. And then lastly, you're going to take these strips, these 5 strips that you pieced in the first, strip piecing right up here. And you need to cut off 96 2-inch sections. So when you're measuring these, I usually don't measure from the bottom. I measure from here on that seam because I feel that it's very, very even and it keeps me even. So you're gonna, cut off the end, or a lot of times when I'm cutting, I will cut in my first cut. I'll cut in 2 inches, just to a little from the 2-inch mark on my first cut. And then that next one, I'll just flip it around and then I'll get my first clean 2 inches. And then, after you're cutting a few, you might have to, clean it up again. Now, I'm going to bring up the way I cut, but I'm also going to mention that I'm a very, very experienced cutter. Really, really have done this a lot. So if you are a confident, experienced cutter, I will show you this method, but only do this if you are confident and experienced. And you might want to try it first on a scrap. Okay? Before I did it, I kind of repressed my strips so that I made sure I had a really crisp press. Made sure these were all going the correct way on both sides and this way. And I laid them together, so dark up, dark down, and I pushed them together so that the seams were butting together. So basically I nested them and I cut them off in pairs. So why did I do that? Well, it's very efficient cutting, for one, so that I only had to cut 48 pairs instead of 96 little pieces. I put my ruler right on the sewing line, and I cut in a little on the first one because you have some selvage there. And I cut it off, and then I move it away. And then the next cut, I just kind of feel to make sure that it's butting us. And you can feel the seams nested together. And then I went to the next one, and I lined it up there. And I cut it. And the nice, oops, I could feel it got cut on that seam. And the nice thing is that they're already nested, and it shows you sewing them through with the light one on the bottom. So I flipped it over and sewed it that way, but they're already paired together. So I just picked them up and ran them right through my machine. Now, when I got down here and I'm moving it along, before I do the next one, I just feel it, and I can feel it nested. You can kind of feel it. And if it's not nested, you kind of move it slightly around, but it's just like a second of movement. And then I just go like that and do my next cut. So it's pretty easy, and then you can see right there that it's paired together. And then I just flipped it so the white was on the bottom because it showed that you wanted the white on the bottom and that on the top, and press it that way. I'm not sure if that matters because I don't know what the next step is, but I just did it by the picture. So you can try that if you're interested. I've already sewn all of mine. I've sewn all 48 of my pairs. You can see them. They're all sewn, and I did it like that, but they matched up and they look beautiful. So like I said, only do that if you're a confident cutter and you feel really good about that. But if you want to try it, it works great, or it worked great for me. So I just thought I'd mention that. So once you get through those pieces, that's all you need to do for step 1. So have fun, and we will see you for next month. Okay, so before I let you go, can you guess what it is? I think I have a good idea. Okay, so I'm gonna lay it out. All right, so I think this is what it is. I think that I think, well, let's see, where this is a 4-patch, Jerry. Okay, I think it's going to go like this. And then I think that's it. And then I think that...
Stop, you're spoiling it.
Am I spoiling it? Okay, I think I got it. You guys have it? Well, maybe you don't cut this all the way down, and then it goes like that. I think that's it, right, Jerry? Okay,
Perfect.
that's it. Okay, perfect. Sorry I spoiled it. Okay, we'll see you next month.